Hello and welcome back to Sharks Happen. On today's show we are going to go over a couple of surfers, we're going to go over a swimmer, we're going to go over a spear fisherman. We're going to finish out the show with a little return to what you've been eating, shark. So stick around, it's going to be a great show. Okay, we're going to start out real quick. We're going to head over to Kyushu Island, which is over in Japan. And the date on this attack is May 21st of 1950. An unidentified 19-year-old male, he was out, it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He was about 50 yards from shore, water was clear, and he was attacked. The only information we have, he was bitten in the hip, and the attack turned out to be fatal. We don't know what kind of shark, we don't know what size shark, probably a very large shark, so he's going to go into our attack stats, but we don't even have his name. But like I said, we do know he's 19, we do know he was 50 yards from shore. Don't know how deep the water was, but it was nice, it was clear by the reports. So like I said, we're not going to have any of the other information on the shark and not even the victim's name, but we'll put it down in there, and if it ever comes up, we'll go ahead and add that to the stats. Okay, now we're going to head over to a spot known as Mavericks in the Half Moon Bay, and that is in California. The date is September 29th of 2000. Peck Euwer, he is 34 years old. He and a friend Mike met up with another friend and they went to the spot. They were at the beach and they were at a spot known as, they called it Phlegm Balls. And he says he was there and they were looking out and his friends were, Mark and a couple of the other friends were going to go to another spot. So he and his buddy Mike, they went out and decided they would paddle out. They took a wave in and it sounds like they went back to their car. And it's about before 9 o'clock in the morning, they're about to get back into their car and their buddies had all decided that they were going to go out surfing there at Phlegm Balls also. So they decided to suit back up and they head out. Now to get out to where they're gonna get the good waves, they paddle out a quarter to a third of a mile. It's quite a ways. And Peck said that he was out of shape as he didn't do much surfing that year. And he lagged behind everybody as they were paddling out. And he gets just past this there's a drop, there's a reef, and he gets just to the edge of the reef, and it probably gets deeper there, and he needs to take a little bit of a break. He's lagging behind the others because he's out of shape and he's on a shorter board than what is recommended, I guess, for that area. I guess it's an 11-foot board they recommend because of just, I guess, the waves, and he's only on a 6-foot something board, and his buddy Mike is only on a 7-foot something board. So both of them are probably having a tough go of it paddling out there. So they all meet up after the reef, and then they tell their one buddy to keep going, and he keeps going. They said they'll keep an eye on him. Now Peck says that he sat up and stretched his back, which I've heard that a lot from surfers. They kind of stretch themselves. Then he laid down and went to start paddling again. And he said he was hit by the force of a train. Something just came up underneath and just crashed into his board. And he was knocked like up in the air off of the board. And he said at first he thought that the water had went out from under him and he slammed on top of the reef. And he said just then he saw the conical nose. He says he remembers seeing the eye and the teeth of the shark come up out of the water near his elbow. So he looked over and he could see the shark pop up. He says he can't remember much after that. And he says that he was able to hang on to his board. And he says he couldn't tell the size of the shark, but he could tell it was probably pretty big because he felt the swirl of the water underneath, and he had to hang on to his board to keep that swirl of water when the shark swam off from sucking him down into the water. So he ends up getting smacked up off of the board, but lands on the board, is able to hang on, so he never ends up in the water with the shark, and the shark never ends up actually getting him. It dented the board probably from the impact. There's a big dent probably about this size on the board, and the top teeth came down on the board, they say, when he was popped up in the air. So saved him from being bitten when it hit like that from underneath, because it popped him out of the way when the shark grabbed onto the board. He lands back down and then just hangs on as the shark swims off. The shark let go of the board right away and just decided to leave the area. He said he was frightened, didn't know what to do, didn't want to stick his hands in the water, but he didn't want to stay there. And his buddy looked shocked too, so they ended up getting in, and he ends up with a cut to his, I think it's 2 slash cuts to his legs, the suit, his wetsuit, the leg of the wetsuit, but he has no cuts on himself. So he gets attacked by the great white. They don't say what size the great white is, but they say it's a great white. And, you know, he ends up, it reminds me of the one guy that has a nick on his finger when he ran into like a 14-foot great white shark. He ended up getting a nick on his finger. This guy got off even easier than that. And this other guy, I think, was a diver that was in there, a spear fisherman, that kind of got his finger nicked by the shark. But that's our attack on Peck Euwer, an attack, not an attempt to predate, by a great white shark. We just don't know what size. Okay, now we're going to head over to Sanibel Island. This is over in Florida. The date on this attack is August 5th of 2013. Christian Mercurio. He is 17 years old, and he is out doing some fishing. He is 20 yards from shore on a sandbar. So he's probably went through deeper water and got onto the sandbar 20 yards from shore. And he's in waist deep water on the sandbar. He's been fishing for 2 to 3 hours, and it's reported that he may have had bait like connected to his hip, which would be in the water. But I mean, you're casting and you're reeling all day, probably with fish on there. You know, you're going to attract what you want to catch. Sometimes you'll attract something you don't want to catch, and that's what sounds like happened here. He is standing there fishing. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and there's about 20 people on the beach, 10 people in the water, with a couple of them within 3 to 20 meters from him, so pretty close. And I believe his family's at the beach too, because he goes ahead and he screams I think to his mom, "Help, I've been bitten by a shark." And they think he's joking at first. They don't think he's been bitten. But he says that it felt like somebody taking cement and just slamming it on your foot. He was bitten in the foot. And oh man, it just sounds painful. And like he said, with somebody dropping concrete on your foot, that's what he said this felt like. And a lot of these people that say when they're bitten in the leg or the arm, they say, it's funny, they don't talk about the cut, they talk about the pain from the hit, how hard the hit is. It's so hard that it stuns them. That's probably part of the reason why they don't feel pain at first, is because they're stunned by just the impact of the shark hitting them in the first place. And this sounds like just the clamping on the foot. I mean, that's gotta hurt. So he was on the beach, he was 20 yards out, they get him in. He gets his foot taken care of. They say that they think this was a 6 to 8 foot bull shark that got a hold of his foot. So not one of the normal, spinners and black tips, or even you get a lot of probably lemon sharks in the area maybe, and your gray nurses and sandbars. It's a bull shark got a hold of his foot. That's a different story altogether. And he's lucky that he got out of there with just that injury, because we know how bull sharks like to feed a lot of times on whatever they can get their teeth on, kind of like a tiger shark at times. So Christian Mercurio gets out with an attack, not an attempt to predate, by a 6 to 8 foot bull shark, and that's what we'll put him down as, and we'll move on. Okay, now we're going to head over to Zeltikin Island, which is over in Russia, and the date is August 18th of 2011. Valery Sidorovich, he is 16 years old, and he is out diving for scallops. He's only 20 meters from shore, very close to shore, and he's diving, collecting scallops, and on the way down or up, one of the times he went down, a shark came up and bit him in the leg, and he took his mask. He was waving his mask at people that were obviously close by on the beach to let him know he had an issue, and they had gotten in and gotten him out of the water. And he goes in with they had to take, and actually people did first aid on the beach, and then they had to take him on a boat ride to get him to help, and which they end up doing, and he survives the attack. Now the crazy thing about this one is what sharks are over there. The one clip that I went through, I'll put it up there. One of the people said that one of the sharks that they encountered was a 7-foot or an 8-foot, 2.5 meter salmon shark. I get to use my salmon shark clip. I'm so excited about that. But they said that it's, you know, they don't attack people. Well, how do you know? They're not around people that much. So if they're one of the sharks that's in those waters, it's a possibility it could have done it. Now, the other sharks that are in the area that they had been catching every now and then was the great white. So you either have the great white get a hold of him or the salmon shark, because I guess the only thing that they really have in the waters there are little dogfish sharks. They don't have a lot of vicious sharks in that area, I don't think. At least by a couple of the stories I came across, it seems like there's, you know, just dogfish in the water, and here you have, you know, a salmon shark being in the area, and then some great whites. So, you know, I would think it's probably a great white, but it could be a salmon shark. I mean, we don't know if they're going to attack people. The only reason that they don't is water's so cold usually where they're at that they don't run into people very much. It always makes me wonder whether, you know, ships that go down over there in the colder waters where, you know, orcas and these salmon sharks tend to live in those really cold waters. If salmon sharks ever do consume any humans that end up unfortunately drowning in the water like that. So just one of the things I wonder is, does a salmon shark attack? They can't really tell from the bite. And the bite was to his leg, to his, I believe it was his hip and his leg. And they get him in and they get him repaired. So Valery ends up going in with it's an attack, not an attempt to predate. We just don't know what kind of shark that was, but it's interesting that it could possibly be a salmon shark. We'll move on. Okay, now we're going to head over to Broughton Island, and that is over in New South Wales, Australia. The date, April 3rd of 1960. Ken Morris, he is out with a couple other friends, and they are doing some spearfishing. I believe he's out with 4 other friends. 2 of them are in the boat. So 2 men are in the boat. He's down spearfishing, and he's just speared himself, I believe it is a grouper, delicious. Got himself a grouper, and it sounds like it was quite a ways from him. And then he had a friend that was in the water that was also doing some filming. The friend doing the filming wasn't filming him spearfishing, he was just in the water and I think somewhere else. So he's there with a few other people and he's in the water. They don't tell the depth, and he was at the surface and a shark came up and went ahead, passed up his fish. So he thought it was going to get the grouper. It passed the grouper up, and this could be one of those instances where the thing is going to get defensive and try to clear the area, territorial attack. Basically to make sure that you don't end up with what it thinks is its food. So it's coming after Ken Morris. Ken Morris takes his gun and shoots the thing in the mouth. And it's so close to him that he had to pull his gun out of the shark's mouth. The spear was still in the mouth. He had to pull the gun out of the shark's mouth, and his hand ended up getting either cut this time or in the next run, but I think it was this run. And the shark ended up getting the spear in the mouth, and then it swam off and went after the grouper. But it couldn't get the grouper because it had the spear in its mouth. So it couldn't bite down on the grouper because of the spear in its mouth. So it decides to make another run at Ken. And it makes this run at Ken, and it gets to about 4 feet from him, and it finally turns and goes off. And he ends up getting out of there with just minor injuries to his hand, or to both hands, one of the two. But that seems to have happened when he shot the shark in the mouth the first time. This thing turned out to be what they say is a 12-foot bronze whaler shark, which is just huge. That's about as big as they come. They're kind of like bull sharks, cousin of the bull shark, and they go about the same size. So you're talking up to 13 feet probably for that thing, and to have a 12-footer, you got about the biggest one that you have coming after you instead of the food. And then when it tries to go after the food, because you shot it in the mouth, it can't eat the food, so it comes back at you again. That's just not good news. So that's the attack on Ken Morris, an attack Not an attempt to predate, hardly any injury, thank goodness, by a 12-foot bronze whaler, and we will move on. Okay, now we're going to finish off our unprovoked attacks. We're going to go over to Balian Beach, which is over in Bali, in Indonesia, and the date is April 12th of 2011. Joe Ferrar, he is 30 years old, and he is out doing some surfing. He's about 8:30 in the morning, and he's paddled his way. He's laying on his board. There's about 10 people in the water, nobody really close to him, and he gets himself about 150 meters from shore. It's about 165 yards from shore. He's laying on his board, and he's lazily paddling to get back out to where he's going to grab a wave and come back in. Now, a setup on this is it must have been raining because they have a river mouth that's close by, and the water is zero visibility. You cannot see anything below the surface. And he even mentions that, you know, he's thinking in his head as he's looking down at this water, this might not be the best thing to be out here paddling around in this stuff, but he is. He's paddling, and he says he stuck his right arm into the water, and boom, he ripped his arm out of the water. He might have ripped it out of the shark's mouth, but he was bitten for less than a second. The thing came up and hit him, and he didn't know it was a shark. He pulled his arm up, and as soon as he pulled his arm up, he saw the shark's body surface. So now the shark is next to him, back of the shark is up out of the water next to him, and it disappears under the water. Now he's going to make his way in, but he's got to hold his arm, probably right here on the inside. He's got to hold that in. We've heard about things where something's held by a flap of skin. That's kind of what happened here. Terrible looking bite. I mean, oh, and you can see this one. If you go ahead and you go ahead and DuckDuckGo or Google and put in Joe Ferrar, and then what you want to look at is Shark Attack Survivors. Has Bali in the name, the date in the name, and it's Shark Attack Survivors site. And when you click on that, the first thing you're going to run across is some very atrocious pictures of this arm. This arm just looks horrendous. And the thing is Joe Ferrar allowed pictures to be taken. He allowed a series of pictures to be taken of his arm during the stages of the surgery. I've never seen that, to where you see it at the beginning, and then all of a sudden as they're working, and I think one of them they show the syringes in there. It's a tough one to look at, but you'll also see an interview with Joe Ferrar in there where he talks about this. And one of the crazier things is, you know, he ended up getting back in, and he said that when he released his arm, because he was holding his arm together as he was getting back in, and he says when he released his arm it kind of opened up on him, so he had to keep that shut. Well, his friends are there. It sounds like a friend, Penn is one of the names, maybe Penny, short for Penny, is what I'm taking it, but a friend of his, he told her, don't tell Penn, like he was going to hide that his arm has almost got a huge chunk completely taken out of it. So that's the story on him, and the chunk is just awful. 2.5 hour surgery, and they show it as they go through and to where it's finally sewn up. One of the worst arm injuries I have seen without having part of the arm removed. But this happens in a second. 1 second, your arm's fine. The next second he stuck his arm in the water, his arm's like that. That's the whole thing with these attacks. It doesn't matter how rare, it doesn't matter how anything. 1 second and his arm needs all this repairing, but you know, because a shark ended up being under him in the water, which you couldn't see in. He knew it was a bad idea to be into something like that. So we'll call that an attack, not an attempt to predate. They're not sure what kind of shark it was that went ahead and got a hold of him. You know, could be anything that got a hold of you like that. I don't think that they were able to tell, and it doesn't look like it hit any bones. But you know, he did rip his arm out of the shark's mouth, or ripped it away. I mean, reflexively, it sounds like. So it could have been a loss of that whole piece had he not done that. You never know. And so 5 tendons ended up being damaged in the process. And like I said, if you have the stomach for it, you want to see what an arm injury can be done in 1 second by one of these sharks in that water, then Joe Ferrar is the one you want to look at. shark attack survivors site, pictures of the thing going all the way through the surgery, and like I said, the interview in which, you know, it shows, talks about everything that he was going through that he can remember, and it's pretty funny that the friend said, I think she's going to find out, when he says, don't tell her about this. That might be something I'd say. So that's the attack on Joe Ferrar. Attack, not an attempt to predate, just not sure what type of shark it was. Being black water, like brown water like that, it'd be real tough to identify it, even if you got a full picture, I think, of, let's say, the head of the shark or the back of the shark. You're not going to get a lot to look at that you normally would in clear water. So that's the attack, and we'll get to the end of the show with What You've Been Eating Shark. Okay, now we're going to finish off the show with What You've Been Eating Shark. This one is right from H. David Baldrich's book. One of my favorites, and this was in, well, they're talking about Alfred Hahn, and this is over in Ocean Ridge, Florida, on the 9th of October, 1961. Alfred, he was last seen standing on a jetty. So he's out there near the water, he's standing out on a jetty. People see him standing out there. He disappears. 3 days later, about 10 miles away, they find his head, and they said that at the neck it seemed like triangular serrations, so they think a shark went ahead and did that. Then they find his body about 3 miles from where they found his head, down under a reef, about 8 to 10 feet deep water. It's down, lodged under a reef or down under a reef, and they find the body. All that is left of Alfred is his spinal cord, his pelvis, and then his bones of his lower extremities. Arms are gone. Most of the ribs are gone, and they said that it looked like the ribs were almost pulled off. So they determined that he probably drowned and then was attacked and eaten by sharks. Sharks, or even some other fishes. Now, when you're in the water like that, yes, some other fishes and crabs and crustaceans, they'll all do their thing too. When you're in the water for that long, anything that's out there is going to start feeding. It's just what they do. So there was barely anything left of Alfred Hahn, and that's what the sharks had been eating that day. Interesting to know, how he ended up in the water. Was he hit by some kind of, I don't think it's wave action that put him into the water. So did he go into the water on his own and just wasn't able to swim his way out of there and ended up drowning? Or did he jump in the water and did a shark grab him and just take him away? Hard to tell, but that's the story of Alfred. And that's the end of the shark part of the show. Just a quick update on my last couple trips. Well, my last trip to Georgia, which was probably about 2 weeks ago now. Get down there, we poured his back porch, my dad's back porch, and then the first day we go golfing. Actually, the second day I'm there, we head out and we go golfing. And we get out, now we've been golfing like crap. The whole time I've been going up there, we've just gone down there, we're just not golfing well. So I get there and we're playing around, and we're playing really well. I mean, both of us are. If it wasn't for our putting, we would have shot in the 40s, both the front and the back. Our putting was horrible, and the greens at Quitman Country Club there in Georgia, they're a little bit on the slanty side, and it's very tough to two putt the hole. 3 putts is doable. 2, it's kind of tough. A lot of the holes are on these things. So we go ahead and we golf, and we both felt really good about how we played. It felt like a different kind of round when you're up next to the green and the number of shots you're supposed to be there in. I wasn't necessarily on it, but I was right next to it most of the time. So I wasn't as tired as I normally am, taking a lot less shots. My pitching was really good. Like I said, my putting could have made it so that I would have shot in the 40s. I shot in the low 50s, I think, in both front and back, and he did too. So both of us played really well. We get done, we do our fishing. Now, fishing is the next day. We head out to do our fishing. It's my stepmother's birthday, so we're going to catch a fish dinner for us. So we're out there, and we head out, and everything's all set. with the boat. We don't have to worry about anything. We get the boat casted off and we're out. But we didn't even get out of the driveway this time before I spilt my pop. I put it up on top of his truck this time, because I go and I lift up the trailer and I'll put it on the hook for him, on the ball. So I put that up onto the hitch, and I go to get my pop and I can't see it. It's on the ground. So I busted a hole, one of those huge pops from Big K. So we stop and get another pop, and I spilled that one in the boat too. So this is the third time in a row that I've spilled a full Mountain Dew in that boat. So I got to stop bringing Mountain Dew on the boat. Now the second thing is I had the last time we were out, and I forgot to bring my tackle box home. I had this scent. It's scent to help you catch crappies, and this stuff smells like garbage. It's in a plastic, little container, and I had that in the bottom of my tackle box. Well, it leaked all over everything, so the whole tackle box smelled like this gross crappie stuff. So I finally brought it home and fixed it up. But we're out there fishing. I'm rigging stuff up. I'm rigging my first thing up. I get it all rigged and I cast, and I perfectly put this thing right under the dock where you're going to get a crappie. So boom, I see it go in there and bam, a crappie hits, and he hits hard. He takes it straight to the left. I go to set the hook, and that son of a bitch let go, and I'm hooked into the wood. First thing I did was had to break the thing and retie up again. So now we're into this, I'm hooking myself. I think I hooked myself 3 times on that. Didn't catch any fish, and that was my only really good bite the whole day. And I swear it's because of this scent stuff on my stuff. So we're not having any luck under the bridge. So my dad's like, let's go over by the lily pads. So we go over to the lily pads. Now, we go and we put the boat finally in the middle of the lily pads, because he's catching fish. He's taking, and as long as he leaves the tail of the worm hanging off the thing, he's getting bites and catching fish. And all you were doing is dropping the things into a hole between the lily pads. When you get a bite, he's yanking them out. He gets 7 fish. He gets 7, and 6 of them were keepers, and his partner got 0. I didn't catch a single fish. Now this is completely opposite of how it was at this same lake. We go to this Paradise Lake that's over there in Valdosta, Georgia. And it's just a little lake, and it's fun to get out there and fish. But I was the one who was catching the fish up until this point. I had him like, I think it was 6 to 3. I had the lead, but now I just had a 7 to 0. That's just terrible. And like I said, I only have 1 bite the whole time, and one hit, let me say. I was getting nibbles over there and the other stuff, but they were playing games with me while they were going out and jumping on his line for him. So I couldn't pull one of them up. So I didn't have the best fishing time as far as providing, and he cleaned them and froze them, because now we have to catch more fish just to have 1 dinner. So we're done with that. Now, the day of the fishing, we get back and we're watching, it's the, what was it? There's one of the big golf tournaments around, and we're watching this. Like I said, we just golfed really good 2 days before. So we're watching these pros dropping these balls. I mean, one of them put it in the hole from like 170 yards out, just one hopping in and for an eagle. And I'm like, son of a bitch. So we're watching this, and we both are thinking the same thing when we go out the next day. We're just going to tear up this golf course. I don't think either one of us played that bad even when we started golf. I could do nothing right. I hit straight away, and I took my iron, and I'm behind some trees because I hadn't been slicing it all, but for some reason I'm letting my damn driver just kind of unhinge itself before it hits the ball, and this thing is going up and trying to go up over trees off to the right. I was in some terrible positions. So I'm sitting there, I grab my iron, my 5-iron, and I'm going to hit it through these trees. I have a nice opening over there. Well, I hit it, and it didn't even go to the opening I wanted. There were trees before that this hooked ball, and I'm a right-hander. This thing went hooking to the left like crazy. It went about 40 yards forward and about 150 yards to the left. I've never hooked a ball with my iron like that in my life. We were both just doing the stupidest things you could ever do. And we were, that's all we were talking about when we left, is how good we played the other day and how we just never played that bad as we did the last time I was there. And like I said, we had the mentals after that. So I'm hoping this little 2-3 week break I'm going to have of coming back to Michigan. I'm thinking I'm going back in the next week here. But it better go better than that. Just better wipe that out of my mind. I've been driving the ball like there's no tomorrow, and now all of a sudden I'm slicing all over the place. And it's because I watched these pros. Don't watch the pros. So that's an update on my trips down to Georgia. You know, if anything, if I catch fish now, I'll let you know. Or if I shoot in the 40s like I should, if my putter would not stop 3-putting me everywhere, then that'd be fine. But that's about everything for the show for today. I hope you join me in a few more days when I get back with another episode of probably a multi-victim attack is coming up. But I got a few of these shows coming up. And of course, a new full show coming up in the next 5-6 days. So I hope you join me for that. Thank you for watching. And if you go into that water, remember, you are much more afraid of those sharks than they are of you.